let's go ahead and hear from Zach, and then we'll follow up with some other Eagles talk.
Always good to talk with this guy who covers the Eagles for PHLY Sports, the great Zach Berman. Hey, Zach, welcome back to Philly Pressbox Radio.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Sure. Hey, so much to get to with the NFL postseason about to begin, including, of course, that Eagles-Packers game Sunday at 4:30 at the Link. Before we get to that, Zach, let's do a quick look back at the Birds' just concluded 14-3 regular season. I don't know what your prediction was back in early September, but I'm guessing it wasn't for a 14-win campaign. What were the key factors for this so far highly successful season?
Yeah, a few things. First off, the defense exceeded my expectations. I thought the Eagles were going to be a double-digit win team. I thought 11, 12 wins, depending on what would happen at the end of the year, if the last game was meaningful or meaningless. But the defense, I thought, was going to be middle of the pack, and I thought the offense was going to be explosive, top five. I didn't expect them to have the number one defense in the NFL. It's a credit to the players, obviously, a credit to Vic Fangio. So that's the place to start. You also have to look at, obviously, what Saquon Barkley's brought to the team has been significant, and his playmaking ability, the fact that they're able to control games in the second half, the explosiveness, he's just been even better than they could have anticipated. Then you look at the fact that they've been able to stay relatively healthy, which is important, right? The years, for instance, and they haven't had many of them, but the years when things have gone bad here in Philly, it's been because the offensive line's been beat up, and they've been able to keep their offensive line healthy. They've been able to keep most of their team healthy. So that's been a key. And I think Nick Sirianni's really navigated the year well as well. His messaging, he's been steady. He's able to keep these guys motivated each week. So I give Sirianni a lot of credit as well.
I've asked two or three people who or what was the biggest surprise about this Eagle season, and they each quickly said Zach Bond, a no-brainer, one of them said. So you, Zach with an H, you can't mention Zach with a K as the most pleasant surprise. So who was the second biggest surprise for you this year?
I like that. After Zach Bond, I would say Quinyon Mitchell. Now, look, he's your first-round pick, 21st overall. You're expecting him to be good. I didn't expect him to be this good this soon. He plays like a veteran. He's been their top cornerback. I thought there might be a bit of a learning curve coming from the Mid-Atlantic Conference to the NFL, and he's just been on point each week. And so the way he's playing, I would have to put up there as well.
All right. Full disclosure to our audience, we are taping this chat Tuesday night since you have a crazy busy Wednesday. So as we speak, we don't have an official status update regarding QB1, who's, of course, been in concussion protocol for 16 or 17 days now. So we are assuming Jalen Hurts will be good to go this weekend health-wise. But, Zach, is there a rust factor to worry about?
It's a fair question. Look, whenever you miss that amount of time, it's something you consider. Now, the thing I'll acknowledge is that a concussion, it's different than an ankle injury or a shoulder injury that, in theory, if you're recovered, you should be able to resume, your physical capabilities, right? And so a rust factor, it's hard to say. I don't think so. But look, there might be an acclimation process this week, of course. But I think if he succeeds or fails on Sunday, it won't be if he doesn't play well. I don't think it'll be because he missed the last 2.5 weeks. And if he does play well, I don't think it's because rust isn't a factor. Like I think it'll be for football reasons that they're playing a good team, and it's show up and try to win this game.
And we're assuming Kenny Pickett will be the backup, not Tanner McKee, right?
Yeah, that's interesting. I do think Kenny Pickett's going to be the backup. I don't think it's a slam dunk. Nick Sirianni left himself some wiggle room this week. Tanner McKee did play well. I think the reason they acquired Kenny Pickett, those conditions still exist, in that he still has the experience, the starting experience. They liked the way he played against Dallas, but I wouldn't rule it out.
Well, speaking of Jalen Hurts, though, I was looking at the NFL final 2024 passer ratings, and, well, there's Lamar Jackson at the top, as a lot of people would expect, but He's followed by Goff and then Burrow. Surprisingly, Josh Allen was down at number 8. And yeah, that Patrick Mahomes guy way down at number 16. Jalen Hurts, meanwhile, snuck into the top 5. He completed nearly 69% of his passes through just 5 interceptions, of course. How would you assess Hurts' 2024 season?
Yeah, I think passer rating can, I don't want to say be misleading because, look, everyone's being graded on the same, with the same formula, but I don't think it tells the complete story.
Yeah.
I think that Hurts has done enough in the passing game. I think he's been inconsistent. I think there was a period in there. You look at the Panthers game in particular when they didn't reach their capabilities. The offense did evolve though post-bye, and there was a period of time there where they really didn't need to pass the ball. So there were certain games, I think of Baltimore, for instance, when the volume wasn't there, but the efficiency was there. But then there were other games when there was more to be desired in the passing game. So yeah, certainly you look at the overall numbers, they don't compare to what they've been in the past. And I don't think volume tells the full story of it, but I don't think it's been a bad passing year. That said, when you're they're 27th in the NFL or certainly bottom third in the NFL in passing offense, you expect that to be higher when you have AJ Brown and you have Devontae Smith. I understand why they ran the ball as much as they did. But I think Jalen was inconsistent this year at times through the air. But look, he won a lot of games, and I don't think wins and losses, it's a quarterback stat per se, but it's often reflective of the quarterback.
Right.
And Jalen's done a lot this year to help them win games.
Hey, how good was it to see tight end Dallas Goedert getting back into action in Week 18, looking pretty good?
Yeah, it was important for them, and not just in the passing game, but also the running game. I think that they really missed his blocking, and I think that's going to help them in the playoffs. And then as a pass catcher, you saw what he could do. He had 4 catches in the first half of that game. So the Eagles, you talk about rust, the Eagles wanted to shake the rust off of Dallas Goedert. They were able to do so, and now they're in a position where, where they're going to need him in the postseason.
You mentioned Saquon Barkley earlier. What did you make of the season he had? 2,000 plus yards, nearly the record, but didn't get to play Week 18. But what about the season for Saquon?
Yeah, I expected him to be good this year, obviously. I didn't expect him to be this good. And I think if anyone told you they did, they'd probably be misleading you, because 2,000 yards and not just the 2,000 yards, but the way he did it and the explosiveness that he had. I mean, being a home run hitter, the consistency that he had, the majority of his games were 100 plus yards, and just behind the scenes, really respected teammate. He's fit into the fabric of the locker room. He's been everything they could have wanted and more. And to think that, I don't want to say it was a polarizing signing, but it certainly wasn't like a slam dunk signing. It was the type of thing where there was a thought, you're spending $13 million on a running back. It's an absolute bargain. It's one of the best free agent signings they've had in a long time. You can say the best ever. I mean, they've had some really good ones. I think of Malcolm Jenkins being one. Obviously, I think of when they signed John Runyon, and you can go on down the list. I mean, they signed Nick Foles technically as a free agent. He was Super Bowl MVP. Brandon Brooks was an All-Pro player for them. But what Saquon's done this year, it's historic, and all the praise and the accolades, they're all merited.
All right, Sunday, it's the Packers. They not only lost their season finale to the Bears, they also suffered a couple of injuries. Quarterback Jordan Love, a right elbow injury. He's expected to play, I guess, on Sunday. But wide receiver Christian Watson will not be there after suffering a torn ACL. How significant is the fact that the Packers will be without Watson, who didn't have a huge year, but he was a big play guy with a lot of 40 and 50, even 60-yard catch and run plays, and he averaged more than 21 yards per reception.
Yeah, it's a good observation, Chet, because I do think that they're going to miss his ability to stretch the field. And, they'll have Bo Melton try to do that. Jaden Reed can try to do it, but that was Christian Watson's role. And I think the geometry, the shape of the offense changes without Watson in there. And part of what makes the Packers dangerous is their ability to spread the ball to, 4 or 5 different players. So you take one of them off the field, it does change things up. I think Jordan Love, from all indications, he's going to be fine. He'll be, he's going to be out there playing. Mm-hmm. But the Watson injury is a big one for sure. I do think, though, overall about the Packers, I'll say Eagles fans, should be more worried than I think some of them might seem to be. And again, obviously, when I read comments, whether it's email or on my PHLY Eagles show or on social media, or just talking to people, that might not be representative of all fans, but there tends to be, I like that photo. There you go.
Yeah.
But there tends to be this idea that the Eagles are like far superior to them. And the Packers don't have a signature win. Look, I understand the Packers lost last week to the Bears. Other than that, they have 5 losses this season. All 5 losses are to 14-win teams, the Eagles included, right? They lost the Eagles, the Lions, and the Vikings. And I've seen Jordan Love literally as a 7 seed go into Dallas, a 2 seed, and dominate them last year, like play just top of the league football. So the thing that's important to keep in mind in the postseason, this is an obvious statement, but it's the absolute truth, is this isn't the NBA or the NHL. It's not a 7-game series. It's if you face a hot quarterback one day, your season's over. And so I think Green Bay should absolutely be taken as seriously as can be. This is a legitimate Super Bowl contender that they're playing in the first round.
Yeah, not only do they have Jordan Love, they have a pretty good running back like the Eagles do. Yeah. They have Josh Jacobs, who had a very good year. So not going to be easy, but you do think the Eagles will prevail Sunday?
I do. I do think the Eagles have more talent. They have the home field advantage. They beat Green Bay on a neutral field. Now, it was a slippery field, right? And it was a long time ago. Both teams have evolved since then. But I think if the Eagles play their A game, they'll win. That said, you can't afford to be mediocre in this game. You can't afford to just get by. I think I'll put it this way. I don't think like a C+, B- game beats Green Bay. I think maybe your B+ game can get by. Your A game is going to beat them. But if you're not on point on Sunday, then Green Bay can upset you for sure.
And as you noted the other day, the Eagles, if they do win on Sunday, could play the Bucks, Rams, or Vikings in the second round. Might not know the answer till Monday night. So which of these various scenarios is most likely, and which opponent would be most preferable for the Birds in the division round?
Yeah, Tampa Bay is most likely, right? There's a 2-4 chance of it being Tampa Bay.
And I heard you say they're overrated. You're not worried about Tampa Bay.
I wouldn't say overrated, but yeah, I think of those 3 teams, Tampa Bay is the team that I would most want to see. Now, I understand there's some history there, right? Yeah. I mean, Tampa Bay's beaten them. Now, Tampa Bay's beaten them down there. When they played in the playoffs, the past 2 times they played in the playoffs, I think it's different coming up to Philly. I know Mayfield's played well, and Bucky Irving's really giving them a dimension in their offense. And Todd Bowles has kind of had Jalen Hurts' number to an extent. But I think the Rams are a good team. You see it in the efficiency ratings. I think Minnesota, you don't stumble into 14 wins. I understand it could be different on the road, but of those 3 teams, yeah, I think Tampa and cold weather is probably the most preferable outcome, I would think, for the Eagles.
All right, we got 2 minutes left, Zach. One thing I want to mention: you wrote this book last year, and by gosh, it's another book about the Eagles. Tell our viewers about it and where they can find it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So it's called The Franchise Filled Up Eagles: A Curated History of the Birds. It takes you behind the scenes of the last 25 years of the Eagles, the executives, the coaches, the quarterbacks, the stars, the icons, the moments, the Super Bowl season. And there's some new interviews. There's some reporting from my 13 years covering the team. And I think it helps you relive some of it's by far the most successful period in franchise history. If you just look at the fact that they won a Super Bowl, you look at the sustained run of success. And this kind of takes you behind the scenes of a lot that went into that happening. And as far as where you can find it, anywhere books are sold, they tell me to say, right? I mean, you go to your local bookstore, you go to wherever, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, you name it, your local bookshops, they should hopefully have them in stock.
And finally, 3 and out. 3 quick questions, very brief answers. Number 1, Penn State, Notre Dame. Who you got?
Well, my son loves Penn State. My wife went there. So my heart says Penn State there, but my head says Notre Dame. I like that Notre Dame defense. But you know what? I'm going to pander to the audience here and go with Penn State.
There you go. Good answer. I like that. Number 2, what's the future for ex-Eagles coach and now ex-Jaguars coach Doug Peterson?
Yeah, I haven't spoken to Doug, but it wouldn't surprise me if Doug, enjoys retired life or Florida life a bit. I think Doug, as outstanding of a football coach as he is, and he's proven that, Doug also knows how to hang out and enjoy himself. And I think he won't mind hanging out and enjoying himself. I don't know that to be a fact, of course, but my guess is he could take some time to decompress here.
Last thing, true or false, you're a fan of the Oxford comma.
Thanks for watching. Yeah, I am a fan of the Oxford comma. I wish more of the publications where I've worked at have used it in the past. I think it helps you distinguish the last two nouns in a series, right? Yep. I do prefer the Oxford comma. It always perplexes me why it's not more prevalent, but I'll put it this way. It certainly clears up a lot of ambiguity when you can use the Oxford comma.
And folks, if you don't know what the hell we're talking about, look it up, Oxford comma. Hey, watch this guy, Zach Berman. He's on this great podcast with Bo Wolf and Fran Duffy, an old friend of ours here at the show. It's a really good podcast. Check it out and follow him on Twitter, X, whatever it's called now, @ZBerm, and buy his book. Thanks for doing this again, Zach, and go Birds.
Absolutely. I appreciate you fitting me in. Thanks a lot.
Very good.
Love Zach. He does a great job. That is a good podcast.
Always good. And I liked his grading system on what needs to take place this week to win this game. That was an
A or a B plus to get it done. Yeah.
Right. That was an interesting take on the way he did that. I will say I disagree with him on one thing for sure. I don't want to see Tampa Bay.
Well, let's look at that. Those are the possibilities. You got a 50% chance of it being Tampa Bay based on these other 4 games. Who do you think would be the best opponent for the Eagles, the Rams or the Vikings then?
Well, we beat the Rams. We got hammered by Tampa Bay early. I don't have a problem with us playing the Rams. I like that matchup. The Minnesota matchup, they play good ball, no doubt. Their strength of schedule is near the very bottom of the league, though, and Sam Darnold's still Sam Darnold. I'm not all in on it. He's played well, but I'm not all in on it. That Detroit game, there was a lot of happy feet and a lot of bad football going on from Sam. So if they had to come here, which they will, if they do come, Minnesota, I like our chances against them as well. We have not played well against Baker Mayfield and Tampa Bay.
Yeah. I like the Eagles' chances very much against the Vikings because of the Sam Darnold factor. I think Vic Fangio probably, watched that game and learned a lot about how to defense the Vikings if it came to that. The Rams, I think, would be a tough game. The Bucs, it would be a tough game. And there is history, as Zach mentioned, as you mentioned. But those losses were down in Tampa Bay, and this one was early in the season. I know Todd Bowles maybe can do some things to mess up Jalen Hurts. So I'd probably rather not see them. I would say the number one opponent for me would be the Vikings.
It doesn't bother me as much that Todd Bowles with Jalen Hurts. It's the fact we've never stopped them. They've scored 30-plus points.
That is trouble. Yeah, they make Baker Mayfield look like, Joe Montana or Tom Brady.
Yeah. The Eagles host the Packers. Eagles -4.5.
The Boopster says Tanner McKee has surpassed Lucas Tanner and Dan Tanner as our favorite Tanners. Okay. Dan Tanner. I think it's Dan Tanner, isn't it?
I think so.
Boop says Eagles. I say Eagles. If you want to score, I'm saying 24-20. I think it's going to be close. Packers may cover, but I'm taking the Eagles to win.
I'm going Eagles 27-20.
All right. You have another field goal mixed in, which reminds me, the one thing that scares me, in addition to Hurts possibly being rusty, is Jake Elliott. Yeah. If it comes down to a field goal at the end with Jake, I'm a little worried.
Well, Nick says he's all in on Jake, so we got to ride. We're going to ride with him. He better make kicks. That's all I could say.